ancestors believed there is an ancient island hidden in a storm. Stepping foot on its sands will break the curse.
Welcome back to another video, Disney fans. With Moana 2 being the latest film to come from the company, there is a lot to consider about the sequel's narrative and where it left the characters. Overall, I genuinely enjoyed the story and had fun listening to the soundtrack and learning about Moana's crewmates, who are now prominent figures in the franchise. Yet, I couldn't help feeling that the story didn't pack the same punch as the original Moana, which is usually the case for follow-up films. One of the drawbacks of the film that stood out to me the most was the anti-climatic ending. Throughout the film, the audience is fed information about Nalo, a vengeful god who is desperate for more power. Yet, the most of Moana and her crew see of him is a massive storm that they encounter and defeat at the tail end of the film. While lifting Nalo's curse came with a great cost for Moana, it felt like the film's final conflict began and ended in a flash. With this in mind, I would like to discuss alternative endings for Moana 2 in today's video.
Simeo! Oh, how are you here? I'm not.
Number 1. Facing Nalo. Throughout the sequel, the audience is reminded of Nalo and his power. Not only did he lead to the death of Motunui's greatest wayfinder, but he also sank the island of Montefetu to prevent humanity from reconnecting. To prevent any human from stepping on Montefetu's shores and breaking his curse, he creates a massive storm strong enough to sink any vessel. We also learn from Maui that the pair have a history, which may also include the goddess Matongi. While Matongi seems like a secondary antagonist at first, she tells Moana that she's actually a prisoner of Nalo and is forced to do his bidding. As she offers Moana advice, reunites her with Maui, and allows them to use the Gateway of the Gods, I suspect that either she or Nalo would have a large role to play in the latter half of the film. Nalo did seem like the type who wouldn't get his hands dirty, so I wouldn't have been surprised if he released Matongi as the crew reached Montefetu, forcing her to stand in their way. When this didn't happen, I assumed that the massive storm was a manifestation of Nalo who would eventually take physical form and match Maui blow for blow. Again, my assumptions were proven incorrect, as Maui used all his power to knock out tornadoes and withstand lightning strikes. Nalo remains a face in the clouds even as Moana dives into the ocean and swims for Montefetu. The lightning striking her felt like a stroke of luck, but as her fingertips had touched the island's shores, the curse lifted. With the curse gone, the billowing storm surrounding Montefetu disappeared. If Nalo himself was the storm, then Moana's actions forced him to retreat. As the first Moana film allowed Moana to interact with her antagonist, I suspected that the sequel would one-up this experience by pitting Moana against a god who was less forgiving than Te Kā. Instead of trying to sail into the eye of a storm, Moana and her crew could have used their various skills to personally stand against Nalo. Doing so could have wrapped up the narrative quite nicely, as it would show how much the crew had grown as a team and prove that Nalo's assumption was correct. People are stronger when they work together. The film could have ended in a similar place, but instead of sitting upon his throne, Nalo would need to retreat and tend his wounds before planning revenge. Number 2. Maui loses his powers. When Moana and her crew finally reach Montefetu, Maui attempted to protect them by knocking down elements of the storm before they could reach the boat. When Moana realized that the storm wasn't interested in Maui, she sent him to its center, where he could use his magical fish hook to lift the sunken island from the water. To ensure Maui's success, Moana used her boat as bait, allowing her crew to work in unconventional ways to keep themselves safe. In a fantastic show of character development, Maui became increasingly distracted as the storm raged on, with his gaze turned back to Moana and their crew more than once. Although he started as a selfish and self-absorbed demigod concerned with his self-image, Maui has since learned to care for others. He's so distracted by Moana's well-being that he's not quick enough to dodge a well-aimed lightning strike, which leached his powers and stripped him of his tattoos. The attack occurred moments before Maui would fall from the sky, and as he floated helplessly in the ocean, I assumed Nalo had stripped him of his abilities. Yet Maui didn't stay powered down for long, as the gods restored his powers and tattoos when they revived Moana. Maui permanently losing his powers because he chose to help mortals would have been a fantastic twist, and my favorite part of the film. Not only would he become human, but he and Moana would switch roles in the franchise, as she later became a demigod. As a human, Maui would need to find new ways to help humanity, and would likely start anew on Motunui, becoming a resident of the island.
Moana. What is
Number 3. They never reach the island. Moana's main goal throughout the film is to fulfill her ancestors' dying wish and reach Motefetu. Initially, she and her crew are led to the mysterious island by a shooting star, but several obstacles slow their journey and take them off course. They first encounter the Kakamora, who overpower the inexperienced crew and leave them paralyzed. Then they made a deal with the Kakamora to strike down a ship-eating clam, but the plan went awry, sending Moana and her friends down a whirlpool and into an underwater prison. There they find Maui and Matangi. The goddess does help them get closer to Motefetu, but they're dropped in dark waters filled with man-eating serpents. They nearly die in the encounter, especially Moni, who fell off the boat and narrowly escaped with his life. There was a point in the film after her crew had endured more than enough hardships that Moana considered giving up and abandoning Motefetu. Maui managed to rally his friend with an inspirational speech, but there was always a possibility that his words would fail. The film could have ended abruptly, with Moana deciding that the cost of reaching Motefetu was too great. Had she returned home, even to deposit the rest of her crew on safer shores, she may have found Motunui destroyed and devoid of life. The devastating scene could have been a direct callback to the vision she received at the beginning of the film, which could encourage her to set sail for Motefetu again, where she would demand that Nalo restore her people. Number 4. Moana's permanent death. The most heartbreaking scene Moana 2 has to offer is right after Moana broke the curse of Motefetu. Her selfless act allowed her to save her people, but by diving into the ocean, she was easy prey for one of Nalo's lightning bolts. The strike killed her, leaving Maui to cradle her body. When watching the film in theaters, there were many families in the audience, and the scene of Maui singing with Moana's ancestors had every audience member stunned into silence. It was hauntingly beautiful, and it went on long enough that I thought Moana's story was over. It would have left a profound impact on everyone watching and Moana's crew, who would need to tell her story to the people on Motunui. The film chose to revive Moana, making her another human favored by the gods. Moana will become a demigod alongside Maui and will have abilities of her own. However, had the film not revived Moana and allowed her death to carry the franchise forward, her character could have become something much different. When Moana first learned about Motefetu, she fretted about leaving her island behind, knowing that she may lose her life on the journey. Moana's fears were foreshadowing her death, yes, but it could have also pointed to her becoming a spiritual guide alongside her ancestors. As Moana depended on the spirit of her grandmother Tala for guidance, and older Samia could have called upon her sister. As I said, Moana 2 was a joy to watch, but I think the narrative could have benefited from raising the stakes and including long-lasting consequences. In the first film, Maui is stranded without his magical fishhook after stealing Te Fiti's heart. Meanwhile, Moana's people have remained ostracized on their island for hundreds of years, due to Te Kā's darkness spreading across the ocean. While I understand the importance of Moana reconnecting the people of the sea to ensure Motunui's prosperity, the sequel felt like the bridge between the original film and what's next for the franchise. With the film using a more open-ended conclusion, I'm curious to see where Moana's story will go from here.
You can't sail?
I am self-taught.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on our uploads.
What? I said